right? A rub is just where a deer took its antlers and rubbed it up against the tree. There's a lot that we can learn from that, but maybe it's worth noting, you know, what a deer is actually doing. Like what's a deer trying to get out of this whole process?
This is a communication device, and it's hard to see on this one, but there's like a older, smallish kind of rub there. Maybe the same deer did it, who knows. Feels like they're play fighting, almost like somebody going into the gym and working like the heavy bag, you know, like they're not sparring, they're not fighting, but they're just working out something springy and getting that feel, and you kind of see them, you know, sometimes when you're in a tree stand and you see it moving, and you know, they're just working that. So they're
a good clue. Well, and then on top of that, you also have the rub that happens in September, when deer are losing their velvet, right? They're rubbing to get that velvet off. So you have that early season rub going on, the territorial, the kind of play style. I think there's also like I would maybe call it a frustration rub too, like in the rut when the buck's all amped up and maybe there's like a buck locked down with a doe over here and then there's like satellite bucks kind of moving around trying to get in there. You'll see them just like need to like get some of that stress out and those rip it apart. Or maybe there's another buck coming in
like
and
a
they're
dominance
making
display.
a scrape.
Yep.
Yeah, like you said, it's a form of communication.
Yep.
But from a hunter's perspective, there's a lot we can take from it too. You can learn to a degree how big of a deer made this, to a certain degree. You know, you can tell whether a little buck or an old buck maybe made it. Like any size buck might rub a tree like this.
Right.
Big deer, little deer, anything. A very young buck did not make that one.
Yep. And I would say too, on that note, one of the things that I always look at with rubs is location matters so much and quantity matters so much.
Like the concentration of it.
Right. Everybody loves to find a giant rub, right? It's cool. You know a big deer made it, but finding a whole bunch of rubs in a spot, especially if it's positioned where it's like back in the cover and you can look and see that food source or up on a bench on a ridge and you're like, okay, like he spent some time here, there's rubs all over, maybe a rub line leading out. That's so many clues to what a buck likes to do there. A lot of times multiple bucks. You can look at this rub and go, well, I know which way he was standing.
Yeah, direction.
And so you go, he was walking in this way. What's over here? Well, there's a cornfield. Okay, so did he make this in the morning when he left the food and was walking back here into this thick stuff to bed and just made it, versus if you were back in this stuff and you found a rub facing out this way, you could probably go, probably bedded back there, probably made it in the evening coming out. And so often these rubs are positioned just inside the cover because they leave the open or they don't go into the open too early, but they want to be up and moving and doing their thing. So often they leave their calling card just inside the cover and they'll tell you, is this morning? Is this evening? And that's super important.
Yep. You can also tell how recently a rub was made.
Right.
Mostly that's found, I at least would look at like the coloration and just the definition of the rubbed off wood. Like this one I would say would be from last year. It's still orangey. When we're talking about recency and like those fresh rubs to jump on right away, is that a rub made like right then and there, like within a day or two or something like that. Not only will it be, you know, an oranger or white or yellow kind of coloration, but you will actually be able to see moisture still coming out of the tree. So when you see something that's like wet, dripping, when you're seeing shavings of this wood, you know, on the ground, that's telling you like, hey, this happened since the last leaves dropped or before. This happened recently. And that's when, like in those types of situations, you've got something that's very actionable.
Right.
Lots of communication happening here. You can see this is a tree that has been rubbed recently, but then also you can see the sign of old rubs on it too. On either side, you can see those healing scars.
This is a communication
not every rub is like this, but
right.
This is like one type.
This one, when you factor in what else is around it, this one's important. Yeah. You know that you could run a camera on this and you might have, you know, 10 different bucks in a 4-day period come in there and use that. When you're out there and you're finding deer sign, you're finding rubs, the thing that you want to answer the most is when are they using it? Because you find a lot of deer sign that does you no good because it happen at night, right? Like they're doing it at night. So when you can start to find a concentration of rubs in the cover, and which we have along that trail right there, but then you also find this Signpost rub that's just a generational thing that's serving as sort of like a calling card for every deer that comes through there to take a census of every other deer.
Yep.
Now, instead of just walking along a trail and being like, there's a nice rub there, nice rub there, you have the spot on the spot.
And I think an important next step when it comes to reading any kind of sign, like the first thing is like, okay, I noticed it. And a lot of people stop there. But the next thing is, why is it here? And that helps you do what you're talking about. Going from just like, oh, here's a rub, there's a rub, there's a rub. Why was there this line of rubs? Or why is there this big Signpost rub here? And then you can start using that in your hunting strategy when you're realizing, okay, this is here for a reason because it's in this concentration of sign. There's it's funneling deer activity. Multiple deer are coming back to this again and again to check it, to smell, see what's going on. Because of all those things, I'm gonna know, okay, this is a spot that's worth doing A, B, or C on. And I think rubs can tell you that kind of stuff. Rubs can indicate direction of travel like we talked about. Rubs can just confirm the presence of bucks. Like if you're in a new area, you've never hunted there before, there's a lot of deer, you're seeing a lot of deer sign, but you don't see a single rub bigger than like a little tiny tree like that, that might tell you there might not be a lot of old deer around. On the flip side, you go and scout a new place and you find a bunch of big, huge rubs tore up, and that gives you a good sign, oh, there are some older deer.
A lot of new hunters, a lot of inexperienced hunters would even walk through here, find these rubs, see this, and they would use it to validate sitting out there on the edge of that cornfield. But when we're standing here, I can feel this wind coming off there. So if you were a big buck here and you wanted to check this, and you wanted to cruise this interior trail and not poke your nose out where all the hunters are, now you have the wind advantage, you're tucked into the cover, and so people would look at it and go, well, I could set up in that tree and kill him, but I can shoot in the field. But the place to kill him is probably back in here somewhere to use that to your advantage where they think they're safe, they're staying in the cover, they're using the wind, they're visiting exactly where they want to go. They showed you this, so instead of putting yourself in a danger zone spot there, you get back in here and it goes against all of our instincts, but that's how you kill big ones.